Hey guys, Deflex. So I've been watching a lot of reviews on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III, and this smartphone has pretty much everything I've always wanted in a smartphone. I mean, in terms of the hardware, not really the software. Snapdragon 888, a 4K OLED display with 120Hz, an expandable storage up to 1TB, it charges with USB-C, reverse wireless charging, a custom shutter button, and the most exciting part, which turned out to be a little bit less exciting, is the camera system. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, there are more features to this smartphone, like it has an headphone jack and all that stuff, but these are just the ones I really care about. And the major ones I really want to talk about in this video is the display and the camera system. Let's get to it. Now, the display on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III is a 4K OLED display that can go up to 120 frames per second. Yeah, cool. I'm a big fan of display. I love cool visuals, which means I'm going to love a display that's able to display cool visuals. But if you're a fan of tech, you should know that 4K at up to 120 frames per second, and for the most part it's going to be at full brightness, is going to consume a lot of battery. Now, according to the reviews, you can actually change the refresh rate of the display, which is actually cool. That's going to save a lot of battery life. But the weird thing is that you can actually change the display resolution of the phone, which I find to be very strange, because you don't want the phone to be in 4K every single time. It's actually very strange because that is not actually practical for the battery life. I mean, I get it, you can change the refresh rate, but if you can't change the display resolution, which actually in my opinion kind of consumes more battery than refresh rates, that is just strange. I mean, even if the battery is like 100,000 mAh battery, it's not power efficient and it's just not practical. It just doesn't make that much sense. I mean, if 120Hz and 4K display comes at the expense of battery life, I mean, is it really worth it though? The camera system on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III is actually very impressive. Usually, anytime a smartphone company wants to add a new focal length to their camera system, they do that by adding a new lens to their camera system. And by focal length, I mean how wide or how close up the shot is. I'm not a big fan of smartphone having multiple lenses, but what Sony did is actually very smart. It's called Variable Optical Zoom, which means the optical element in the camera system physically moves to produce two different focal lengths. With this technology, phones can be able to produce two focal lengths with just one lens. I mean, that is just very cool. Now, Sony actually took it further by adding manual controls to their native camera app. That is what actually got my interest in this phone. Like, it's just crazy, which means you're gonna be able to control the ISO, you're gonna be able to control the aperture, you can actually control the type of focus you want on this phone, either autofocus or manual focus. That is almost the kind of same setting that I'm using on my Sony A7S III right now. Now, this phone sounds like the perfect phone. I mean, the camera specs is just crazy and the hardware innovation is just mind-blowing. But what does the image and the video actually look like? Well, clearly I don't have this phone. So before I spend $1,300 on this phone, I mean, I always watch reviews on this phone, like multiple reviews. And if the first review of the smartphone that you're about to spend $1,300 says this about this phone:
pretty soft, a little bit muted colors, a little noisy sometimes, pretty meh.
I'm not gonna spend $1,300 on the phone just to get okay or meh. I mean, nobody wants to hear meh on a smartphone they're about to spend $1,300 on. I mean, the only meh you should be hearing is there's a goat passing by your window or something like that, because you know, goats makes the sound meh, you know. Never mind. Now, this kind of brings me to my conclusion. The Sony Xperia 1 Mark III sounds like the perfect phone. I mean, it has an headphone jack, it has a 4K OLED display with 120Hz, it has expandable storage up to 1TB, it charges with USB-C, it has reverse wireless charging. I mean, it pretty much has everything you want on a smartphone. 12GB of RAM. But the thing about smartphone is that no matter how good the hardware is, if the software is not there to fully take advantage of the hardware, it's not going to perform at its best. And that's the reason why I actually love iPhone. I mean, I might sound like an Apple sheep, but Apple knows how to take full advantage of their hardware with software. I mean, iPhones don't have the best hardware in the market. I mean, there are Androids that have full 100% display, having fingerprints under the display, you know, having camera under the display, you know, flip out screen and cameras popping left and right, but the hardware on iPhone is just meh. But the performance on the iPhone 12 Pro Max is better than most smartphones in the market, and the iPhone 12 Pro Max doesn't have the most amazing hardware in the market. I mean, it doesn't even have 120Hz display. I mean, most Android by now have been using 120Hz for like 7-8 years now. The iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is the latest phone from Apple, doesn't have 120Hz, and that kind of proved my point. Hardware without software, well, you get a meh experience. Just imagine if Apple was the one that made the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. The same hardware, everything the same thing, same camera system, same manual controls and all that stuff. The phone is going to be 100 times better than what Sony did with the smartphone. I guess this company wants us to choose between good hardware but amazing performance, or innovative hardware, cool features on the hardware, but meh performance. I guess that's the only option we have right now. I guess we can't have both. Anyways, that is just my opinion on this Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. I really appreciate you guys for taking your time to watch my video. It's been your boy 11, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.